Welcome. Welcome to this congregation. We are the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lower Bucks, and I am Janet Kelly, your lay leader for today's service. Thank you for choosing to join us today. Our UU community is built on love, connection, and acceptance for all. Our goal is to strengthen your personal and spiritual journey through today's message in word and song. So I identify as a Jewish member of the UUFLB. UUs are unique in that I have the freedom to do that. I have the freedom to have dual citizenship, so to speak. And that is a great joy because I can bring my traditions of my childhood to share with this community. That's a very big deal. I don't think any other faith community allows their congregants to freely express their thoughts and their true feelings. You know, people are scared. There's a lot of dogma and creed in other religions, but we don't have that. We don't have dogma and creed. What we have is a spiritual journey that we share. And so I bring my traditions to you, and you let me celebrate them with you, and I really appreciate that. So this period of time is the Jewish high holidays. They are the holiest days of the Jewish year. But we can all relate as a community to the new year because it's our new church year, right? And kids start their new school year. So it's not like a foreign concept. It's something that we can all relate to. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to wish you all Lishana Tova, a very happy new year. Rosh Hashanah, the new year, started last Wednesday, and this Friday begins Yom Kippur. We are meant to reflect during these 10 days. We're meant to say we are sorry and make amends for any mistakes we've made during the year. So my friends, I am truly sorry if I have inadvertently hurt your feelings or done something I shouldn't have done. And I hope you will forgive me as I forgive all of you. Because at the center of our faith, our UU faith, is love. And so with love, I want to share what is important to me. So these 10 days, we reflect. And there are symbols for this holiday. So I brought you some apples and honey because we want to remember it's a sweet year. And then at the end of the 10 days, we are kind of freed up. We've atoned and we have a clean slate to start the next year. And this is a nice concept. And in fact, Jews take this very seriously. We even have a special ritual called tashlik where we take breadcrumbs or pebbles or birdseed, and we throw them into a running body of water. They do it at Tyler. Shirley does it at Tyler, that little creek, and that's symbolic of casting away your sins, which is nice. Makes you feel free. So. May you all be inscribed in the book of life. That's another saying, another greeting. May you be inscribed in the book of life for another year. So, meaning you've kind of set your goal for the coming year. Like you have said you're sorry, and now those things that you did that may have made the good Lord turn against you and steal your fate for not such great comings can be changed by these reflections over the 10 days. So now I invite you to relax and enjoy our time together. Unitarian Universalism is a lived faith that inspires us to act, live, and love our values out in the world. For October, our Soul Matters monthly theme will center on the practice of deep listening. which involves hearing more than the words of the speaker. It taps into the deeper meaning, plus some of the unspoken needs and feelings. It is something that is done with the heart as well as the mind, and begins with accurately perceiving what others are saying without interjecting our own thoughts, feelings, or opinions. Today's speaker is Emily Quarles-Mowrer. Emily is a longtime friend of our congregation. She is the child of a UU minister and has been preaching sermons of her own since 2006. Emily's sermon title is Channeling Dr. Dolittle. The French magazine Tablet Historiques et Littéraires is the first known publisher of the phrase, "The more I know people, the better I like dogs." Animals do not use words, but they are wonderful at communicating. Join us as we think about the ways that the skills we use to understand our companion animals may help us to be better at listening to our human companions. Now, a musical interlude.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. So I was going to play this song later in the service, but since Janet just mentioned the high holidays, this is perfect for following in those themes, because this song comes to us from the Jewish tradition. And these days, when I am not here on Sunday, when you don't see me, I am also in services in synagogue leading some of these Jewish services, the high holiday services, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So I'm singing a lot of Hebrew songs. And one of them is a song that is actually found in our UU hymnal, because it speaks to that universal value of being together, how wonderful it is when people come together. And that is exactly the words that the Hebrew translates into. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. How wonderful it is when people come together. And that's people of a shared faith or people of different faiths. People of different ethnicities, people of different religions, any people. How wonderful it is when we all come together, which is what we're doing here this morning. So we're going to start with this wonderful Hebrew tune. And Mike was very skillful to pull up the Hebrew words for us from the middle of the service. So thank you, Mike. And you can follow along with us on the screen with the Hebrew words that's transliterated. And if you are at home and you happen to have a hymnal, it is in the hymn book number 392. And it's a simple tune with not too many words, so we'll repeat it several times. Once you get a sense of it, feel free to sing along. I also come from a great summer camp tradition. And when you sing this song, you usually put your arms around each other and you sway back and forth. It really gets you into the feeling. We don't have to put our arms around each other this morning, unless you really want to. I'm not going to stop you. But it is also sometimes customary in synagogue, you'll see people swaying back and forth. And you kind of feel the motion of the congregation. So feel free to sway if you feel like swaying this morning. Let us begin by singing together, Hine ma tov. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. We sing up high. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
Thank you, Avi. Now I would like to invite our wonderful president, Nancy Harvin, up to light the chalice while I read our opening words. Here today, in this place, and with these people, may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice we light our way. Please welcome Emily Quarles-Mowrer with a message for all ages.
Good morning, everyone. So happy to see you guys this morning. And it's such a beautiful day outside, so I'm glad you chose to come and be inside with me. So this morning, the book that I brought was The Man Who Didn't Like Animals. It's by Deborah Underwood, and the pictures are by Li Win Pham, who is one of my favorite illustrators. There once was a man who loved his tidy home and didn't like animals. One day, a cat appeared. "I don't like cats," the man said. "Go away." But the cat didn't. Are we surprised? The man liked sleeping in the sun, and so did the cat. The man liked watching the rain, and so did the cat. The man liked to eat his dinner at precisely 6 p.m., and so did the cat. Actually, my pets all eat at 6 p.m. precisely, and they sit and stare, and like wherever I am in the house, they're like, "It's 5:57, just so you're aware." Said the man. "Well, maybe this cat isn't so bad." Then another cat appeared. "Go away," said the man. "I don't like..." Well, too late. It's already sleeping. One day, a dog appeared. "I don't like dogs," said the man. "Go away." But the dog didn't. The man liked watching the sunrise, and so did the dog. The man liked gardening, so did the dog. The man liked to take long walks, and so did the dog. Said the man. "Oh, maybe this dog isn't so bad." Then another dog appeared. "Go away," said the man. "I don't..." Oh, well, too late. And next came a duck, and more ducks, and then a chicken, and more chickens. And a goat, and more goats, and a pig, and more pigs, and a cow. Doesn't he live in an apartment building? And finally, some cranky neighbors. "You must get out these animals. "This is not a farm," said a neighbor. "I thought you didn't even like animals," said another neighbor. Well, the man thought so too. He called a meeting, and the animals gathered round. "I'm sorry, but you'll have to go," he said. Well, the animals filed slowly out, one by one. As they grew smaller, the man's heart broke right in two. He called, "Wait!" Aw, he's giving them all hugs. The man loved his tidy home, but he loved the animals more. So, Old MacDonald bought a farm. E-I-E-I-O.
Thanks, Emily. We always love the stories. Glad that we tell stories even if the kids aren't here. And although there are no children here today, let us sing to wish peace to all children wherever they are.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of us surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
Emily will give us the reading this morning.
So the reading this morning comes from a book called Horse Girls. My sister's friend who works at a publishing company was like, "Your sister rides horses, right? Will she read this and like give me a quote?" But this is actually a book of essays about people for whom horses were important in their lives. And I'm going to read a little bit of a story called The Shrinking Mountain by Noor Nasreen Ibrahim. She actually grew up going back and forth between the U.S., where she was living, and I believe it's Pakistan. So she says, this is while she is out in her family's, the camp that her families would visit every summer. "The horses approached our house each afternoon, the clip-clopping of hooves growing louder and louder, the soft tinkling of the bells on their bridles transforming into a cacophony of sound. They were a small group of varying sizes and colors, some bedraggled and diminutive, others proud and imposing. They had bells, colorful beads, and ornaments dangling from their bridles and around their mouths and ears. Pink, yellow, orange, and blue balls of woolen string hung under the horses' heads like fat dandelions twining round their long necks. We raced up the stairs outside our front door and were confronted with these majestic beasts shaking their manes, grunting, stomping, like large cars revving up their engines. Shakur, with his big smile and high voice that emerged from under his full mustache, called out to us. Shakur was usually one of the first faces we saw upon driving into Nathhigali. We'd find him perched on the high edge of the road on one of the stone barriers erected at curves to block cars from careening down the mountain. His brown camise fluttered in the breeze, and the tips of his feet in their dusty, worn-out sandals or sneakers, depending on the day, curled over the edge of the barrier as he peered out at the mountains in the distance. He was confident, even so dangerously close to the edge. He and his brothers had the ease of those who had traversed these hills and mountains their entire lives. I assumed that all the years spent with Shakur and his brothers meant that I knew them well. But our communication was limited to the daily hour spent on horseback, where we focused on navigating each path, trying to overtake each other, laughing when someone's horse stopped and lifted its tail and let loose a string of dung. Shakur answered our questions about each horse with the patience of someone used to repeating himself to the naive city folk, who was aware of the power dynamic that shaped our interactions long before I was. But we never truly spoke to each other. As I grew older, I understood that my connection with Shakur boiled down to memories that grew dimmer the longer I spent away from Nathi Gali. I called him a few times this year, knowing he was frequently ill. And after I identified myself, he launched into an excited stream of questions, asking after me and my parents and my grandparents. Shakur was bemused when I told him I was writing a story about our time growing up, the horses and my childhood. I pressed him on details about his own childhood, questions I should have thought to ask years before. Shakur's father was a Goriwala. He took tourists up and down the hills for an hourly fee, relying on his earnings and any tips he made to raise his many sons. Shakur was just a little boy when he took up the reins. His father used to strap him on the back of the horse with rope to make sure he wouldn't fall off. Still, he fell frequently, but the more he bruised his knees and elbows, the more he loved his horses. He reminded me how often I ended up with a horse named Kajol. She was a small gray filly with sad eyes. Or Bubbly, a larger brown, warm-hearted horse who always hesitated before setting off at a trot. Bubbly was one of Shakur's favorites. He could leave any of us unattended on her. The horses who ran with them had names ranging from Bollywood stars to royal titles to some that made no sense. Prince was a brown horse who didn't know when to relax. There was Shahzadi, the majestic gray-white Ruby aeroplane. We often fought over who would get to ride Ruby, and my eldest cousin usually won. I asked Shakur how he chose Ruby's unusual name. Oh, Ruby is a lovely name for a female horse, and she is swift as an airplane. Our only guarantee of safety was Shakur's comforting presence or one of his brothers grasping our horse's bridle as we went on our evening walks. We had no helmets, no gear normally found in riding schools in the city. We wore running shoes and held sticks fashioned from tree branches, some of which still had some leaves attached to the end. The horsemen had even less. The narrow roads and paths were either muddy or too smooth, and the horses' hooves squelched in the puddles left from the summer monsoons. Anyone with a modicum of caution would imagine that we avoided cantering, let alone galloping. Yet that didn't stop my brother, my cousins, or any of the older boys or girls we spent our summers with. They spotted a clear road with no cars. They dug their heels into their horses' flanks and set off at a gallop. Those of us left behind heard the shouts of laughter of the horsemen who chased after them, their legs carrying them almost as quickly as the horses. I was more closely aligned with the little British girl on horseback from Sheikh Mohammed Amir's painting than I realized. Shakur's responses to my questions were matter of fact, brimming with affection or some simply humoring me, but all tinged with a wary distance that I now was able to recognize, tied closely to our vastly different backgrounds. With a willful lack of awareness, I asked him, "Did you ever want to do anything else?" And he laughed, "I've never known anything else, or even thought about it."
Thank you, Emily. Our share plate today is the World Central Kitchen. The World Central Kitchen has provided more than 300 million fresh, nourishing meals for communities around the world. Your donation today will be used to support our emergency food relief efforts. Please donate generously and give with your heart. donation, which was given with love, is accepted with gratitude. And now, let us welcome back Emily Quarles-Mowrer with her sermon, Channeling Dr. Dolittle.
I'm going to play Emily up here with a little song that when I heard about what Emily was going to talk about and thinking about animals, it actually got me thinking about a song by Randy Newman. And it comes to us from Toy Story, a movie from 1995. It's one of his most famous songs, and when the song was written, it's almost as if it was written from the point of view of the toys, singing to the boy, the main character in the movie. But I also like to think for any of us with furry friends, or should I say furry family members at home, that this is what your cat or your dog or your parakeet might sing to you also. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. When the road looks rough ahead and you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed, you just remember what your old pal said. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. You got troubles, I got them too. There isn't anything that I wouldn't do for you. We stick together and can see it through. 'Cause you got a friend in me. Yes, you got a friend in me. And as the years go by, our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. Yeah, 'cause you got a friend in me. Yeah, you got a friend in me. Yeah, you got a friend in me.
Thanks, Avi. I loved that movie, so that was a really great song. And actually, that movie came out around the same time as the Eddie Murphy version of Dr. Dolittle. Yeah. So channeling Dr. Dolittle. Listen, pay attention. Think about when you might have heard those words. You need to listen to me right now. My parents would say that when they wanted to impress upon me that I needed to behave in a certain way. It's not safe to cross the street without looking. You need to listen to me right now. We all work together to keep this house clean, so you need to listen to me right now and take those toys upstairs. Successfully listening did not mean that I needed to respond. I simply needed to remember what they said and then obey. It's time to sit down and listen. We heard that admonishment as school children, or at least I did. And then we learned a very specific way to listen and pay attention. Listening involves sitting still at a desk and absorbing the words that your teacher is saying and copying whatever they had written on the blackboard. Actually, I had old school chalk blackboards when I was a kid. As a student, I was expected to be silent. Listening did not involve any expectation of conversation. Listening did not involve creativity or empathy. I just needed to be able to remember and repeat. I'm going to go back to some French here. Écoutez, répétez. Those were my instructions in French class. Listen and repeat. Listening involved remembering those words that I just heard and repeating them back to my teacher out loud. Whether I understood or agreed with those words was completely beyond the point. Listen and repeat. How many of you grew up with those instructions in your religious education classes? Now, is it any wonder that we have trouble really listening to others, listening with an open mind and an open heart, when those are among our formative experiences with listening? When listening is associated with taking what someone else says wholesale with no questions and no opportunities for argument. Now, I chose Dr. Dolittle for my title, since Dr. Dolittle is famously able to speak with animals in their own language. Now, I haven't actually read the Dr. Dolittle books. They came out in the 1920s, and they're by Hugh Lofting, and I haven't actually even seen any of the adaptations, not even the Eddie Murphy one from the 90s. But you know, the more I read about the Dr. Dolittle book, the less I actually want to read it. It came from the 1920s when there was a lot of problematic content, which this book shares. But I do like the idea of a person who can speak to animals in their own language. When I was a child, that was the superpower that I wanted to have. I wanted to be like Cinderella in Sleeping Beauty and be able to like talk to the mice in the house. Not that we had mice, but I would want to call them in and talk to them and make friends with all the woodland creatures and all the squirrels outside. Actually, if any of you have ever seen Enchanted, it's an Amy Adams movie from probably the mid-2010s. She's this storybook princess who gets sucked into modern-day New York, and so she calls all the woodland creatures to help her clean the house, and all the roaches and rats come out of the walls of the apartment building to help her. Yeah. So, despite never having read the book Dr. Dolittle, I did always wonder why Dr. Dolittle would have chosen to be a human doctor if he could talk to the animals. Wouldn't it be easier to just be a veterinarian? I mean, part of the hard part of being a veterinarian is that your patients can't tell you where it hurts. If you could have a conversation with the animal, wouldn't that make you the best vet ever? Well, maybe not. After all, doctors have humans as patients, and simply speaking the same language doesn't guarantee that we'll always be able to understand one another. Well, then I thought, oh, maybe Dr. Dolittle is a human doctor because veterinary medicine wasn't like an aspirational career in the 20s. But I remembered one of my favorite books growing up was All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot. That was actually not his real name. His real name was James Alfred White, and he went to Glasgow Veterinary College, which was established in 1862. So he was a vet in the 30s. No, veterinary medicine was pretty well established. It was actually, it's interesting, veterinary medicine was actually established like in ancient Egypt. They had really, really, really complex veterinary medicine, and then a lot of those papyruses and scrolls were lost, and during the Enlightenment, people were like, oh, veterinary medicine, that's a new thing we just came up with. What? So did any of you ever want to be able to talk with the animals? I always think it's really interesting that we wish we could talk to the animals, because I do. I talk to the animals all the time. Like, I bet any of you who has a pet spends a significant amount of time talking to your animals. Maybe we just wish that we could make the animals understand, oh, I don't mean any harm, woodland creatures. Please come eat out of my hand. Or maybe we wish that they would listen to us, just like we had to listen to our parents and our teachers. Oh, that's what we mean talking to the animals. And you know, I've often said my dog is much smarter than me because he can understand a whole lot of English, and I don't understand very much dog at all. And, you know, I understand, like, jumping up and down in front of me means, oh, you probably have to go out. When was the last time you went out? Or holding up his toy and smacking me with it. That means he wants to play with it. I can understand that running back and forth in front of the kitchen door, that means that it's 5:58. It's almost time. Yeah, we need to start opening up those containers that require an opposable thumb. Now, for cats, I also have cats, and I would joke that my cats are just as good at English as I am at cat. In the case of my cats, though, I truly believe that even if I could speak cat, they probably would just do whatever they want anyhow. They would give me the cat equivalent of the nod and smile. Mm-hmm, sure, and then go do whatever they want. But the thing about animals is that they don't speak in words. Listening to animals involves watching, and we have to interpret what they're saying just by looking at them. I don't think I really learned how to listen to the animals until I started working with horses. Unlike the dogs and the cats who share my house, horses are prey animals. A horse's first instinct is to run if they're uncomfortable. Now, humans, we have our predator eyes. They're right in front of our faces. That gives us the stereoscopic vision. Horses' eyes are on the sides of their heads, so they have a really wide panoramic view, but they don't actually see, like they actually have a blind spot right here and right behind their tail. And they don't actually see with much depth perception as we do. But, you know, they can see where you are from pretty much anywhere that you're looking at them. And if you are concentrating both of your predator eyes on them, that is actually pressure to them, and that may make them scared and make them want to run away. So one of the things I learned while working with horses is that you have to give them space. When you're in a field or an enclosure, you don't actually need to be right up next to that horse to direct them where to go. I can be 30 feet away, and if I raise my right arm and lean a little bit right, that horse is going to run that way. So if I'm trying to herd somebody into, like there's this one enclosure, it's a dry lot, and if I'm trying to herd the horse into the stall that's over in this corner of the dry lot, and they're over there, I might go like this, and they'll run that way, and then they're over behind me, and I might do this, and they're gonna start running this way, they're gonna stop because they see this arm, and they're gonna run into the stall. And none of that is with me touching the horse. I'm like 20, 30 feet away, and the whole time they can just see that I'm doing this, and they will respond to those movements. It's amazing how little pressure you need to make a horse understand what you're asking them to do. When I first started working with horses, I would move way too fast. I would be walking right into the field. So when you're speaking with animals, you're not speaking with your voice. I mean, you can still speak with your voice, but they're not understanding the English. They're understanding the tone. They're understanding the way you're carrying your body. So if you're coming up to, like, I think of myself as very big, even though these horses are like this tall, I feel bigger than them. And they react to me like I'm bigger than them because I'm coming up to them and I'm saying, you do that. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to do that. Mm-hmm. But that's body language. They're understanding like how you're positioning yourself, how you feel based on how you're holding yourself. And you're speaking with your whole body. And because the horse is so sensitive to my movements, if I'm walking directly into a field, like I need to catch everybody and put you all on the fence and feed you your dinner, and I walk into the field, I'm walking straight at them and looking straight at them, they're not going to think, oh, good things are happening. They know it's dinner time. They can see those buckets out there, but they're like, ah! So I had to learn how to, we're all relaxed here. This is a great day. You're going to have so much fun. Let's go on and get hooked up. With horses, there's a saying, if you have 5 minutes, it's going to take you an hour. If you have an hour, it's only going to take you 5 minutes. Because horses are so sensitive to my movements, I had to pay attention to the way that they're holding their mouths and their ears, which hoof is up, and then I could see how they were going to react, and then I could learn to react or to move or to relax. And often I will get nowhere until I relax. Doesn't matter, like if I'm trying to catch somebody who just cut themselves on the fence, they're panicked already. So if I'm like, oh no, that's a lot of blood, and horses have a lot of blood in their bodies, they bleed a lot when they get a wound, and if I'm starting to panic about that, then they're like, this must be worse than I think it is. And it probably is only like, you're gonna do this, and it's gonna be, oh, it stopped. But if you're like coming in there like, the horse is like twice as big as your movements. So one thing I've noticed is that if I have to go in there to catch them, and I'm gonna do something fun, I have to do the exact same thing if I'm gonna go in there to catch them, to give them a shot. Because if I'm going in there, I might have this needle in my hand, and if I go in there, I'm like, oh, scratch, this is your itchy spot, isn't it? Here's your shot. This is your itchy spot, isn't it? Then they're not gonna be like, eh. But if I go in there and I'm like, oh no, you need to have a blood draw. Okay, let's do this. They're like, I don't want to do this. Just like when you take your kid to the pediatrician and they say, oh, well, it's just gonna be a tiny pinch. And then you give them this shot, and the kid's like, but you know, horses actually, they'll stand still for you until they don't really mind that much. I guess actually, I can understand why they don't mind, because have you ever been bitten by a horsefly? I'd rather get a shot. But another thing that I've learned through working with horses is that I don't know what oh, okay. I thought that was my computer. I was like, wait, my computer has GPS on it now? But another thing I've learned through working with horses is that I don't know what experiences have shaped that horse's reaction. So one horse may really love it if I come up and scratch them between the eyes and their blind spot, and another horse might startle and shy away from my hand. And I've learned that I can't take that horse's reaction as a reflection of me. I know my intention was not to frighten them, it was to do something nice. But whatever they've experienced in the world has taught them that a raised hand heading towards their face means bad things. And so the things that I've learned from horses, I'm trying to remember to apply to people. So for that last point, that I can't take someone else's reaction as a reflection of my intention, that's a really important part of listening for me. Like when I'm speaking, I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but if I say something that someone finds hurtful or dismissive, then I can't take their feedback or their commentary or their admission that didn't feel good to hear. I can't take that as a commentary on me as a person. Communication is communication. So if what I'm saying to someone is not communicating what they need to hear, if they're distracted by the fact that I said guys instead of folks, like I have a particular group of people at work who don't want to be called guys. You can call them folks, you can call them people, but they don't feel like guys is a gender neutral term. I grew up with it as a gender neutral term, but they didn't. And so I can't take that feedback as they are attacking me and they are attacking the place that I come from. I have to take that feedback as they're going to be distracted from the rest of my message by hearing that one word. So I'm going to swap out that word with a different one. So I need to be able to pay attention to what they're saying when they give me that feedback, instead of how what they're saying makes me feel. Just like I do for the horses. It hurts my feelings a little bit when I'm trying to pet a horse and it goes. But on the other hand, if a stranger came up and tried to pet me on the head, I might also flinch. In fact, there was a dog yesterday that at the dance studio where my kids go, there was a dog outside the dance studio, and I went to try to pet it on the head, and it was like, oh no. And then it would come back and ask to be petted again, and I'm like, pet on the shoulder? What? And yeah, it didn't like me to touch its head. It wanted to be petted on the shoulder. And that's okay. But again, that's not a reflection of I'm a terrible person for wanting to pet its head. It's just I didn't understand what it was asking for. And it wasn't asking for head pets. And its friend was asking to kiss me on the mouth. I'm like, whoa, let's stay down. All four on the floor, please. Yeah, so it's easier to take a horse's instinctive flinch than it is to hear that your comment made someone feel like they were being disrespected. But I need to be able to get past that to listen. Now, there's an old adage that says you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should use them in proportion. I think that's hard to do because of the way we're socialized. Because one of the things that we focus on in our culture is what we can do. So if we're listening to somebody and somebody has a problem that they're talking to us about and they want to get that off their chest, what's going through our heads is, okay, well, if you do this, you could have it not happen this way. Or if you do that, you could have it not happen this way. And sometimes they don't want to hear a solution. They want to hear, yeah, that is super frustrating. So it's hard for us to listen because we want to produce productive help. And we think productive help is a solution that might not be the solution they're looking for. So I was looking up deep listening on the internet, and I found Tina Fey, who was writing for IdeaPod. I don't think it was that Tina Fey. Writing for IdeaPod in 2023, and she has 8 different points of how to be a good listener. She said, first off, get rid of distractions. If you're listening to somebody, you're not checking your phone. You're not like looking over their head to see if like the oncoming cars are like, I don't know, gonna veer off the road. You're not checking the weather forecast. You're actually paying attention to them. You're suspending judgment, which means you're not thinking about what their story means for you or means to you. You're just listening to what they have to say. You're not impressing them with your wit or your wisdom because you're listening to them. So that means you don't have to come up with something like a cool quip to say afterwards. They're telling you their story. You don't have to make a comment that makes that story anything but their story. Studying patience and attention. So one of the things that's hard to do when you're listening to somebody is it's hard to focus on what they're saying because after for me, it's about 10 seconds. I've got about 10 seconds of good focus, and then things start going through my head. Grocery list, or that's the solution to their problem, or that's another solution to their problem, or what have you. Your mind starts to race with things, and you have to really work on the focus and the intention to be able to stay in the moment with the person. And that's something that you learn with horses, because if you don't stay in the moment with something that can kick you in the head and kill you, then you might have a problem. Then pay attention to body language, your body language and their body language, just like with the horses. Your body language should be relaxed and open so that they can have relaxed and open body language. And if they're starting to get upset or angry, or you can see that something is really, really hurting them, if you're noticing, that gives you the opportunity to give them a little more grace. Another thing they said about good listening is asking questions and being curious about the person, because they're coming to you with something that really means something to them. And if you're really listening, you're not just coming up with things that you want to tell them, you're coming up with what else do you want to know. And sometimes what you want to know can help them with what they need to hear, with what they need to think about. And the last thing that they said in this article, that they set aside the time for this when they can. That's a really important one, because it takes a really, really long, deep time to have a good, deep conversation. And if you are just, if you're setting aside 5 minutes, it's going to take an hour. So in meetings at work, if I'm really listening and paying attention, I am typing notes. There's no chalk-dusted blackboard to copy. And as much as I try, I cannot type as fast as people speak, so I end up missing chunks and hoping that they aren't the important chunks. I'm also not able to speak while I'm trying to process this. I'm not even really processing it. I'm just getting down words on the keyboard and staring directly into the camera and not looking at my fingers so it looks like I'm paying attention. Even though I am really, really paying attention, I have to be doing this like this. And that is really, really stressful. So, because my meetings are held virtually, so if I'm not looking at the camera, they think that I'm not paying attention, even though I would be paying even more attention if I could actually see the words that I was typing as I was typing them. But if you're having a one-on-one, or if you're doing an interview with somebody, you need those notes because you need to be able to refer to it later, but you also want to still make that connection, and it's really hard to make that connection without being able to see the body language. I mean, that's one of those things that when we were talking about, or when we had the big pandemic and everyone had to stay home, that was something that people really missed. And that's why Zoom got so popular, because just talking to someone on the phone, you miss a lot of information. It's hard to listen to humans when we're just using our ears. Like, we want to be good conversationalists, but we can end up talking past one another. We can end up just waiting to tell our story instead of listening to the person we're speaking with. On the other hand, how many of you have ever had this happen, where you're listening so hard to someone else's story that they stop talking and then the conversation dies because you didn't think of anything else to say? And if we're listening to someone we disagree with, well, that can be even harder, because our first instinct is to listen the way we listen to our parents or our teachers, where we feel compelled to agree in some way. And if we don't agree with them, then we feel compelled to reject it and come up with ways to rebut it. If we're listening the same way we listened in school, we may be able to remember and repeat, but why would we want to? So when that happens, we have to try consciously to take ourselves out of the situation and not think about how their words make sense, but how their body language makes sense. I don't have to agree with you about hot button issues. Like, there was a person who came to knock on my door on Friday to talk about the election. And I didn't have to agree with her on taxes or on bodily autonomy or on anything else that we disagreed about. But I did have to listen to what she said and listen to how deeply she felt about what she said. And if we can come to a place of listening where we're listening to the way that people feel and validating the way that people feel, that helps us to heal that big divide in our country. David Rome, writing in 2010 for Mindfulness magazine, wrote about Carl Rogers. He said, Carl Rogers, the great American psychologist who taught active listening, said that there was a good practice to repeat back or paraphrase what you think you're hearing, and gently seeking clarification when the meaning is not clear. reading that, when I read that in the article, it made me think about écouter et répéter. We're still listening and repeating, but we're not repeating as in we have to agree. We're repeating as in, do I understand? Puts it in a whole new light. It also gave me a tip for what to do when I'm listening so hard I don't know what to say next in the conversation. Rome writes that deep listening involves listening from a deep, receptive, and caring place in oneself to deeper and often subtler levels of meaning and intention in the other person. It's listening that's generous, empathic, supportive, accurate, and trusting. Trust does not imply agreement, but trust that whatever the others say, regardless of how well or poorly it's said, it comes from something true in the experience. So maybe listening is hard to do. Maybe it's so hard that not every conversation requires active listening. Maybe it's okay to give ourselves some grace and acknowledge we're not going to be perfect listeners right away, or for every person, or in every situation. I mean, let's face it, deep listening to your Starbucks barista will probably just yield the realization that you need to pay and get out. But maybe having a relaxed posture and an open expression will make that quick interaction a positive one. And maybe down the road, practicing that openness will also lead us to recognize those opportunities where we can be a pair of listening ears for someone who really needs to be heard. So may it be.
Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you for reminding us that listening isn't just about hearing, it's also about seeing and feeling. And that brings us to a time in our service when we truly try to listen to each other. When we recognize and lift up one another in love. So please come to the microphone and share your joy or your sorrow for our joys and concerns.
Hi, I'm Roseanne Frankenberg. I just wanted to ask you to keep praying for Gary. It was basal cell carcinoma that he has, and he elected to do the radiation, which is just like a pinpoint radiation. It's not full body radiation or anything. So he started this week, and he had 3 treatments. He goes 3 times a week for 6.5 weeks. So I just like your prayers and to keep him in mind. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just wanted to say it's so nice to have an old friend back here visiting with us, Karen Franco. Nice to see you again.
Whether or not you share today for your joys, we in this community join you in celebration. For any sorrows or concerns, may you feel our sympathy and compassion. Now it's time for Spirit of Life.
Please join me in singing. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to
I invite you to sit back, relax, maybe close your eyes for a special meditation. Maybe prayer doesn't mean talking to God at all. Maybe it means just listening, unplugging the TV, turning off the computer, quieting the mental chatter and distractions. Maybe it means listening to the birds and the insects, the wind in the leaves, the creaking and groaning of the trees, noticing who else is out there, not far away, sitting so still we can hear our heartbeat, watch our breath, the gentle whoosh of air, the funny noises from our own insides, marveling at the body we take so much for granted. Maybe it means listening to our dreams, paying more attention to what we really want from life and less attention to all the nagging, scolding voices from our past. Or maybe it's all about listening to each other, not thinking ahead to how we can answer or rebut or parry or advise or admonish, but actually being present to each other. Perhaps if we just sit quietly, we'll overhear a peace whispering through the centuries that's missing from the clamor of the moment. Maybe prayer means listening to the silences between the words, noticing the negativity of space, the vast, undifferentiated, and nameless wonder that underlies it all. Maybe prayer doesn't mean talking to God at all, but listening with the heart to the angel choirs all around us. Those who have ears, let them hear. And that was Reverend Gary Kowalski. Our closing hymn
is number 131, Love Will Guide Us. And as we think about how we can be good listeners, let us take the words that we heard today and try to listen with love and let love guide us. So feel free to rise in body or in spirit as you are able, and please join me in singing this hymn again, number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us, will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
May we open our hearts and minds to one another and the world. May we let ourselves be changed by the stories around us. May we deeply listen and be deeply listened to and be held in silence and love. And so may it always be. Our service is concluded. For those of you on Zoom, thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you again next week. I would like to thank Emily Quarles-Mowrer for a wonderful sermon today. And for all of you who are here, please join us in the cafeteria for coffee, fellowship, and conversation. Go now in peace. Amen and blessed be.